Testing, testing.
All right, that would be now. I'd like to call this meeting to order, a regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole on Tuesday, October 1st, after the Public Works and Highway Committee meeting, and also can be accessed in the Germantown Village Hall boardroom, and can be accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all committee members present except for Trustee Pieper, who is excused. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the September 30th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Move approval is presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve the minutes from the September 30th, 2024 meeting? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unopposed? Motion,
Abstain.
one abstains. Motion carries. Next item is budget review, starting with item A, departmental budget. And we start with number 1, recreation. But before we get right directly into recreation, if our budget director, Matthew Selding, has anything to add or comment on, we'll let him go next. So Matthew.
Thank you very much. Before we get into the departmental review tonight, I just wanted to update the village board on the state aids that the village will be receiving for the 2025 budget. As you can see here, that we did receive significantly more state transportation aid than we had originally included in the 2025 recommended budget, roughly $160,000 more than we had budgeted for. However, we did receive slightly less state shared revenue and state utility aid. So the net available funds in excess of what we have budgeted for is just shy of $136,000. You can use those additional funds for a variety of different goals and objectives for the village board. Some options that we laid out here is to reduce the tax levy, restore seal coating, increase funding for other recreation or library programs, decrease other revenues. So just as we continue through the budget conversations of the next few committee of the whole meetings, keep in mind that there is an additional $136,000 that the board can delegate or reduce the levy for as we move forward.
Good news.
With that, the first department we will be reviewing tonight is the Recreation Department. As you can see here, much like the department from the other night, I wanted to show the levy support for each department. And the Recreation Department is one of the few departments that receives either no levy support or actually contributes to the general fund. And the way it is looking for the 2025 recommended budget is that they will have revenues about $10,000 in excess of expenditures. The increase in revenues is largely driven by the success of the Recreation Department in their fundraising for their different programs and events. Specifically, you'll see that the miscellaneous revenues increased by $42,000. That is a direct result of the Recreation Department fundraising and fundraising for music at the pavilion. Over the course of 2024, the Recreation Department received revenues in excess of that $42,000 for the Music at the Pavilion program. So we wanted to kind of dedicate some additional revenues to help offset those costs and grow that program. On the expense side, overall, you'll see an increase of about 2.6%. That is largely driven by salaries and wages. Part of the 2025 recommended budget includes additional part-time salaries and wages increases of about $20,000, which will allow the Recreation Department to have more staff, whether it be a kids club or other types of programming. In addition, we increased program supplies and expenses by $10,000 with the realization that the 2024 budget saw decreases in both of these areas. Here you'll see a list of positions within the Recreation Department. I did not include part-time and seasonal staff. The Recreation Department has, probably hundreds of part-time and seasonal staff that help them out throughout the year, and I did not go through and list all their different titles and referees and things like that. So with that, I'll take any questions for the Recreation Department.
Committee? Trustee Rick Miller.
Matthew, can you go back to the slide? What was the effect on the levy?
They were levy neutral, so they were actually contributing about $9,000 to the general fund
That's what I
in
thought.
excess of expenses.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly. Thank you.
Trustee Chan Miller.
You made mention that you had increased this year part-time and something for $20,000 and something else for $10,000. What was that?
Yep. We increased part-time salaries by $20,000 and program supplies and expenses by $10,000.
Okay. So, but you said you're adding that in for 2025 because you decreased those two in 2024. So what did you decrease those areas?
But I believe part-times, what did we decrease them in 2024?
Yes.
I don't quite recall. I believe part-time salaries and wages might have been around 40,000, and if the recreation director is here, he can also remind me. And program supplies and expenses was 20,000 or more. I don't recall the exact decreases for the 2024 budget.
You have to come up to the mic.
Yes, our decrease in
Turn it
part-time
on.
salaries is.
You got, turn on the mic. Thanks.
On.
It's on.
You got it, Gil. You're on.
It's on. Was approximately 40,000.
Okay. So you're not quite up to 2023?
No.
No.
40,000.
Yeah, okay, total. And then approximately, we seem to be always missing their part-time people, and they really are a huge part of some of these departments. Not all, but some. And so do you have an estimate of how many part-time people that you would employ over the summer? Because that's what you do.
Well, our biggest staff that we employ comes from our year-round kids club program and our summer kids club program. And we have 5 sites. And Sandy, how many do we have about?
In the summer, we employ like 60 to 65 part-time and full-time staff for kids club. And school year, probably about 25 staff during the school year and 60 to 65 in the summer.
Okay, and the 25 is primarily for the kids club?
Yeah, that's for this, before and after school program.
Okay, and um, do you have to increase the costs for, kids club every year, or how are
The
we?
fees went up rather dramatically this year.
Okay,
So we were able to increase the revenue on that program by over $100,000 this summer.
and I'm sure it's still a good value.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, and then programs, it said they're giving you back $10,000. Is what,
A lot of that is what we like to do is, last year, part of our cuts is we cut out first aid training, CPR training. We only offered it to supervisors instead of complete staffs. But we feel the value that all staff should receive certified training. So that's going to be a big chunk of that 10,000. Also, this year, we used a lot of recycled equipment that was 2 or 3 years old, and we made do of it, but we're at a point now we can't recycle a lot of that equipment for our programs anymore. So we need to replace that. So that's pretty much why we're asking for the 10,000 increase.
sure. What type of, are we talking basketballs and stuff like that?
Everything from sports equipment
Okay.
to instructional equipment, paints, so forth. Like I said, we kind of scraped the barrel this past year to get through.
And you are levy neutral, so you're basically self-funding yourself. Is that correct?
Pretty much, yes.
Well, what do you think your biggest challenge for 2025 is? Upping your staffing, getting your recycled equipment brand new? And what other areas are you?
Well, I won't speak for Sandy and she can speak up, but a lot of it is retention and staff, getting good staff back. Um, every year we have to go through bringing in new staff and training them, and that's always a challenge. And then keeping up with the rentals on the sites. The schools go up on us every year, and we have no control over that. But and we also have to be conscious that we're getting to a point, we don't want to saturate the parents with increases in fees. I mean, we can continue small increases, but right now we're pretty competitive with most of the daycares and other programs out there. But we have to be cautious that we don't increase ourselves out of the market.
Okay. That's, I think that's one of our goals is retention within the village. So totally understand that.
And part of that increase that we're asking is the staffing that are coming back. Most of our kids are young adults or teenagers or college students. So we're competing with the open market where they can make $18, $20 an hour working at McDonald's. And we're paying them $13, $14 an hour. But we do try to increase their salaries each year that they come back as an incentive to continue working for us. So
Yeah.
that's part of the increase that we're asking for.
So your part-time people are basically on the same pay scale as the library, honestly.
Our teenagers start at $10 an hour.
Oh.
But, once they get into college, we start them at $12 an hour and then kind of go from there. If we have adults that work for us, which is common during the school year program, we start them at 15 an hour.
Okay. So what would help you become more attractive as far as attracting and retaining personnel? what kind of an increase do you need for salaries? Is it just the 20,000 or is it more?
I think based on the cuts that we made for this year's budget, if we don't bring any programming back, I think we can live with what was budgeted for us. If we wanna bring back some programs or like, for example, basketball, we might put 12 kids on a team instead of 10 now, so that we can reduce the amount we're spending on gym time, reduce the number of referees and such that way.
And rotate players that way?
Right.
Mhm. And when you're talking about retention of staff, are you talking about your full-time and part-time or just part-time?
Mainly the part-time staff, because they do make less and these teenagers seem to have more opportunity available, like other jobs that they're threatening to go to, because we don't pay that well, but they do have a lot more fun working for us. So that's our only bonus that we got going for us.
They were fun.
Do they get any credits for volunteer?
We do take volunteers. I have some volunteer line judges right now that are doing it for service hours. But yeah, we do advertise that we accept volunteers at all the programs.
Question for, I'm not sure if this is Matthew or Gil, but is the,
Before you start, trustee Miller, are you included?
I just wanted to be clear. So the part-time staff with the increase, you're okay with wages and also your full-time positions as well?
We hope to be, yes, based on what we're predicting for next year, yes. The program supplies, I mean, that we would always like more money for, because we do have a lot of aging equipment.
Yeah. Okay.
And Patty uses contracted labor for the majority of her programs. She doesn't use, because if you run the program and you run it your way, you're technically, not an employee of the village, because you're not using our game plan, so to speak, you know, so a lot of her employees are subcontractors.
Okay, and then, but you still have to pay their fee.
Yes, we pay them, most of them are like a per registration basis. So
Sure.
maybe it's $17 a child or whatever.
Right, okay. And then you cover that by charging per
Correct.
per participant.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
And then she's also has several of her programs, because of the budget cuts, we're doing a save your spot fee. So for example, with Old Germantown, they do a sausage making class, and we're taking a $10 save your spot fee. And then they have to collect the $90 from the participants when they show up for the class. And
Sure.
Old Germantown's having a hard time with that because people aren't showing up then. And so they're missing out on participants showing up because they're not going there to pay the $90. Whereas if they would pay us in advance and they can't cancel, they're gonna show up for the class and they're gonna get paid. But then it affects our budget because we have to pay out Old Germantown, you know, $90 per participant. So that increases our supplies and expenses.
That's a dilemma.
It is.
So, are you going to do it the same way that you did last year then? Or how are you gonna?
And we will
Manage it.
have to do it continue doing it that way, yes.
Yeah. Because I've gone to a class where you have to prepay something
Yes.
to hold your spot. I think that's a good idea. All right. Is there anything else you guys need?
Well, we asked to increase our celebrations, that's our music at the Pavilion series.
Okay.
Of course, we more than make up for the money we generate that we're asking for, but this has become such a popular program. But right now, so out of the 6 bands we get, maybe 1 or 2 of them are what you would consider A, you know, top, and the rest of them are, you know, what we can afford. So we're hoping that with additional funding, we can get some better quality bands, which is going to generate more money for
Sure.
us.
Sure. And then, that's great. So, so what would you need, to get like half of your bands to be on the A level rather than the B level? Is it I don't know how much they cost.
Well, there's a discrepancy and sending back me up. For example, our best band, Bella Kane, we
Yeah,
paid 8,500.
yeah.
Our lower bands, between 2,500 and 4,000 is what we average paying them. So we like to get bands, that we can pay 6,000 or better. That's gonna, attract more crowds.
Increase the quality.
And it also brings us more sponsorships too.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
So at
Those
the
are
end,
all my questions. Thanks.
Trustee Warren?
so at the end of the day, is the music pavilion paying for itself?
Oh, absolutely.
With sponsorship dollars, yes.
What do you mean by that, Trustee Warren?
Well, there's maintenance, there's
that's what I thought.
utilities, there's all of this associated with it, but we're taking in revenue. Well, we're paying for the bands. But,
With sponsorship and beer sales, I think we profited probably 26,000 this summer.
how much?
26,000.
All right, thank you.
Wouldn't, in regards to your question, wouldn't that fall under the buildings and grounds budget then for any repairs or maintenance that goes to that building? So you're not really, or you're not offsetting the cost of that maintenance, you're just,
No,
right? So
no,
that's more pointed to your question if you're covering the cost of the building and the maintenance and the power and everything else. It's what they're covering for the cost of the event. And what they're making by event, not by, putting everything else on top of it. So that would fall under a different budget. Other questions? Village Administrator.
I just wanted to just commend Gil and Sandy and the rest of the team, as we've been talking about here. I think what they've done in 2024 is a really good story, and it was a challenge last year when we were going through the budget process, and I think the way that the Parks team dealt with that and were creative and innovative and really worked to make things better. So I just think they should be commended for that.
Good comment.
Trustee Kaminsky.
I echo that. I think what you do is something so beneficial to the village and to our constituents. And it was tough last year when we had the budget cuts. And I love libraries too, don't get me wrong, but the fact is the rec department does pay for itself with the type of programming they do, and they have that flexibility to come up with programming that pays for itself and brings money to the village. While at the same time, I think entertaining everyone and giving us options. But particularly the music, I think is awesome during the summer to extend that or to spend the money on that. How is the parking going though? I was just curious because I don't live too far from that, and it doesn't bother me, but it seems like Freistadt really gets parked.
It does. It gets pretty packed. Patty's had to rearrange baseball schedules so that on our bigger show nights, there's no baseball because there's nowhere to park.
But it's working out.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Trustee Jan Miller.
I'd just like to make a comment. Yeah, I commend the Recreation Department. The bands are great. It's a lot of fun. If you don't have a good time going to Fireman's Park for music in the park or music at the pavilion or what is it called? Music at the pavilion and concerts in the park, you're really missing it because you bring your own chair, bring your own stuff and have a good time.
leave your beer at home.
Yeah.
But leave your beer at home. Yes.
There.
And wine. Yeah, sometimes they have. But anyway, I just want to make a distinction. The library is great too, but they cannot charge for their programs. They're two different entities. So it's not the same type of a budget. So.
If I may make a comment, while I appreciate the praise you are putting on us with this concert series, but also want to thank DPW because they come in and They help set up the park. They help us get ready for that. They help clean up afterwards. And they attend meetings. They help us beat the bushes for sponsorship. So we couldn't be as successful as we are if it wasn't for Public Works. So thank you, guys.
I think over half of our sponsors come from Scott Anderson's connections. So we appreciate them.
Thank you, Scott.
Other questions? Comments? For recreation? None other? We'll go to senior center.
The senior center is largely supported by the tax levy, as you can see here on your screen. They do have some offsetting intergovernmental revenues as well as charges for the services they provide, but by and large, they are levy supported with a levy, a dedicated levy of about $85,000. We do have revenues remaining relatively flat. We did decrease them by about $600 in the intergovernmental revenue line. That's just to line up more with what we're seeing on the historical actuals. On the expense side, we are seeing a relatively flat budget for the senior center with a slight increase in salaries and wages and operating supplies and expenses increasing slightly for an overall increase of about 0.3%. The senior center is largely staffed by the senior center coordinator, as well as some senior center attendants, mostly who work part-time weekly. And with that, I'll take any questions for the senior center.
Any questions for senior center? Trustee Jan Miller.
I just want to make a comment. I'm on the board and they have been running some great trips and things for this senior center. I've heard from residents that don't even live here that from Menominee Falls, that they come to the Germantown Senior Center because there's so many more opportunities to have different events. So is there, the question is, are there any other opportunities for expanding what you're already doing? Or do you think with the amount of personnel you have, are you tapped out right now?
Well, in a way, this has sort of been a difficult year for the senior center and programs. But they are, striving to get better. One of the things that we'd like to improve is we lost our strength and balance instructor, and it's been a very difficult position to replace, and we're working to replace that. And because of that, we've lost some revenue, but we're trying to get a replacement for that and getting that program back up and running again. I know that, for example, the other night we had what they call a fall soiree. It was a fancy dinner for the seniors that my manager, Mary, was able to use grant money for. So we're looking to continue doing more dinners and celebrations, and that attracts. We had over 100 people attend that program last week. So yes, as we move along, Mary is good about changing out programs and adding new ones as we go along that are well met or popular with the seniors.
Other questions? Comments for senior center? Other questions? Then we'll go to number 3, which is engineering. Thank you, Gil.
Thank you. Thank you, committee.
Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
The engineering department is largely supported by the property tax levy with a recommended budget levy of $172,000. This is an increase over the 2024 adopted budget. This is largely driven by decreases in projected revenues for the engineering department. One of the major areas and this didn't come over as nicely as I thought it would. One of the major decreases in revenues for engineering is public charges for services. In the early 2020s, we had revenues in the high 50s and 60s. Over the last couple of years, they've been between $40,000 and $25,000. So we wanted to better realign what the expected revenues could be for the department, and so we decided to decrease those revenues to $52,000. On the expense side, operating supplies expenses remained largely flat, with a slight decrease of $44 on the operating supplies and expenses side. On the salaries and benefits side, there is an additional position that that administration is recommending for the engineering department, and that is the position of asset manager position. I'm not going to go into as many details about that position. I will allow the DPW director to handle that. But the major changes in the engineering budget are no changes to the operating supplies and expenses, but the additional position of asset manager. Here you can see a list of the different positions within the engineering department. The engineering department is currently fully staffed for the first time in several years, and you can see that listed out here. Okay. The administrator asked that I do include that the asset manager position is split among several of the funds, not just located solely in the general fund, as this position will be managing assets in the water utility and in the sewer utility as well. So the position is broken out between the three funds to help cover the costs of that position.
Okay, so Public Works Director coming forward or engineer? Matthew?
Oh, were there any questions in particular? Or did you want me to talk about the position? I'd be happy to.
Go first with Trustee Warren.
Hey, Matt, so now that we're fully staffed on engineering, you see that the contracted services, i.e. subconsultants, will start to go down a bit?
That's certainly the hope. There's a couple of areas where we're thinking that can be the case. One of those is plan review. We've had a consultant on board for a number of years, maybe even further than that, to assist in plan review. But now that we have two civil engineers on staff, Kevin, as well as our junior civil engineer, that's something in 2025 that we'll be looking to take more ownership over, direct ownership over. And then through competition in bids for new work, we're hoping that we can reduce services that way as well. And then the last piece would be taking on some design work ourselves. So Kevin and I were just talking about Division Road as an example of where we can use Joe Harvat. He's our junior civil engineer, and some of his skills to help in some of the work associated with developing those plans and specs that might have otherwise been contracted. So yeah, we're trying to find ways to reduce those costs, or where we're still forced to use consultants, to have that be as competitive as possible.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee Jan Miller.
I went over the budget and out of the general fund for engineering. And it says, now you're fully staffed. That's great. We haven't been for a long time. So I'm counting about, with this intern, 7.25 people. And so my question is the engineering salaries and wages going to be, the recommended budget for 2025 is $80,000, $80,762. And there's an increase of $26,000.54.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
The question is the $80,000 supposed to cover 7 people?
I can answer that one. All of the positions listed here are split among the general fund, the utilities, as well as the TIDs. So the number you see in the engineering department is the general fund portion of their salaries.
What percentage do you think the general fund is holding up here? Is it a tenth? Is it 10%, 5%?
I think 10% would be a fair estimate.
Okay. So overall, if you looked at the bottom line here, it says there's a 20% increase in the whole budget. And I'm wondering why that is. I thought we were supposed to
Yep.
save money. I'm asking.
So the increase in the engineering budget is almost entirely driven by the new recommended position for the asset manager.
Oh, really?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And how about describing what the duties of this asset manager are going to be?
That's what he was going to get into next.
Yeah, so what we're trying to establish is a systematic way of knowing what we have, knowing what condition it's in, and then managing it appropriately over its life cycle. And then using data that we collect over the course of its life cycle to make appropriate decisions about replacement and when that should fall, repairs, and weigh that against replacement, and just have some intelligence in making decisions and some data-backed history that we can use to justify our requests. So instead of, an inclination or a feeling that somebody has about why a particular project should come forward, we could, in addition to that, because that's valid information as well, but we could back that up with data that shows, an extensive history of repairs on a particular asset, and that's why we're requesting a replacement. So starting at the basic level, we need to identify what we have and get that into a system that's capable of tracking it. And then as we get it into the system, we need to know what condition it's in, and then we need to develop the processes for performing demand-based work as well as preventative maintenance, and sort of making that a system. Another, couple other reasons for this type of transition, I think, is we've got a number of guys working in our department, our superintendents, who've been here a long time and have a long history with their respective areas. And they've been able to, over the years, learn what needs to happen when and how it's done and that sort of thing. But unfortunately for the village, these guys aren't going to be here for, more than 5 years or so.
You've always been here.
They've always been here, but they can't remain. They don't desire to be here forever. So it'll be a loss for sure when we lose them to retirement, which is, their rationale for 3 to 5 years. But I think we have to develop some sort of plan to deal with that. And part of that is taking, what they've done operationally, what they've done in terms of planning, and making it more of a system that somebody that replaces them down the road and replaces me down the road or Kevin down the road can jump into and learn and have programmed without having to go through all the ups and downs and mistakes that we've learned over the years. We can build that into something. And getting to that point is a long process that probably involves multiple different systems. It involves a lot of work. It involves a lot of collaboration, most likely with our staff and with others. And that's the type of thing I think this position would do. And it's a long-term goal, right? I mean, we're not going to, immediately halt what we're doing and totally reverse course and do 180. This is something that is built over time and with patience. So, by the time we're through 5 years, we're able to look back and have made those improvements. And I think having somebody in this position will be a big benefit to seeing that happen over that period of time. And then in addition, there's another set of operational things that this person could assist with too, just in terms of compliance with procedures, assisting with inventories. One of the things that we're working on right now with a consultant is inventorying all the water utility assets for the Public Service Commission. Having some sort of systematic approach to gathering that information and running a report versus what we're doing now would be highly beneficial. So they can work on tasks like that, other technology projects. So I think there's really an endless amount of work that's possible for this type of position. I really see a lot of value in it.
Is something you've seen from other places that you've been
Yeah.
employed?
Yeah, we had a similar position at Walworth County where I worked, and it provided a lot of value there. And just kind of in preparation for this, I did some searching, and it's a very kind of popular position in public works, especially as public works really goes in the direction of more comprehensive asset management.
You see them also getting involved at all within the GIS and monitoring, maybe valves that you've worked with in the last year and keeping a history of that type of equipment or locations within that GIS?
I think there's a fair amount of work in GIS. Yeah, absolutely. That's probably one of the biggest areas. And we've got a lot of needs in GIS. Just, getting up to speed with the system that we have and using its capabilities, and then down the road, expanding into some of these other areas.
Trustee Cutts?
This is a question for Matt. With this asset manager and having better track of all the assets, is that going to change your asset reporting and depreciation? How you record everything?
Well, the depreciation, that's a financial thing. I mean, my primary interest
Sorry,
would be in.
I meant.
Oh, okay.
Matt, sorry.
There's two of us.
Yeah.
Okay.
I certainly don't want to take bigger Matt's position, but I do see some value in having somebody in the DPW department that has a strong understanding of assets. If you look at our ACFR and some of the changes that are typically made by our auditors, it is on the depreciation side and the asset management side. So I think a portion of that would be the better tracking of those assets, both in Munis and whatever system that DPW uses for that, will make those audit entries less likely to be made by the auditors, and something that the village can do, which would help with our financial reporting. I see a strong connection between this position and just tracking overall assets as it relates to depreciation and some of those improvements.
Thank you.
At least he didn't call me old.
Trustee Warren?
Matt M. So isn't it true that to acquire certain state and federal loans or monies that we need to have an asset plan in place to provide them that information to justify that we're good stewards of our infrastructure, and here are the numbers to prove that?
I mean, there's certainly reporting aspects that Matt, you was referring to, that yeah, we have to comply with the PSC as an example. So I think that's what he was hinting at, that having a position like this to better help identify some of the capital improvements that take place over the course of a year can improve our reporting quality to the auditors and to the regulatory agencies. Just speaking from the past year, that was a difficult process for everybody. In the end, it wrapped up and we got through it, I think, better than in previous years. But it's certainly something where if there's a little more focused attention on it from the engineering side, better tracking, we can turn that around into quicker reporting on the backside.
Just to follow up on that, the longest part of the audit typically is our asset portion of the audit as it relates to the sewer utility and water utility. Just tracking those assets throughout the year and the improvements takes us the most amount of time. This position would certainly help with that. It's not going to be dedicated to helping the finance department, but I think there's some contingencies there where it would help the finance department significantly on the asset tracking side for the audit.
Trustee Jan Miller, do you have your hand up?
Yes, please. So just to kind of sum it up, systems inventory for this asset manager, it can be used across the departments. In other words, once you have an inventory, there can be collaboration, and so that you have operational compliance working with the GIS. So the other two questions I have, maybe three, is there any association, or could this person do, or do you have a person that's doing grants for you?
We don't have anybody dedicated to grants. I think different superintendents have worked on grants kind of in their domain, and we've been fairly successful with that. I know I can think of examples for Tim and Scott and Paul, all just in the last couple of years, and Kevin as well. So we've been pretty successful with securing grants, just with existing staff kind of working within their respective domains. I don't think that will change that much with this.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if it was connected at all. And then just a couple other notes while we're on positions. I noticed that you had an intern, and I wanted to know if that was what type of intern it was. What type of interns are you using?
That would be a college intern, so they'd
Is
be
that a
working
paid position or unpaid?
paid.
Paid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this past summer we had an intern from UW-Madison who worked with us for 3 months, and he helped us scan files and did a small amount of field work, but his claim to fame was working with the scanner,
Okay.
making copies.
Oh, it's digitizing information.
So it's all about collecting information. So one of the things that I think that we need, I'm just stating this, that I think that we need as a village is an intern program, but starting also, I'm totally for college students, but if there was something we could do with the high school. And then I have two other quick questions that are like maybe or do you use a company like a Grainger? Are you familiar with Grainger?
Yeah, just a
Great.
supply house, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Do you use somebody like that?
I mean, I don't know specifically about Grainger. I can't say I've seen a lot of requests for
I haven't
that, do we?
seen that.
Um,
Have you? Matt, have you?
We've certainly paid invoices to Grainger, so we do use them.
Yes. Okay. I wasn't sure if I saw that. Okay. That answers that. Also, I just have a question. Who's in charge of the village ponds? We have water retention or ponds?
Well, that's a complicated topic, and one that we hope to work towards some more clarity on, but in terms of who deals with them, I guess from a more of a management perspective, that's the engineering division, and who deals with it more from an operational perspective, that's probably Scott and his group. So it's kind of a combination effort, but we don't have dedicated staff for stormwater.
Okay. Who has the technical information that the DNR is asking for all the village ponds? Who would I check with? Is that Kevin?
Talk to Kevin, yep.
Okay.
just consistent with our process, if you wouldn't mind. If you want to email Kevin and ask him for information, if you could please copy
Sure,
me, I'd appreciate that.
not a worry.
Other questions for engineering?
Before we move on, I just want to highlight some of the engineering capital projects that you will be seeing on the fourth committee, the whole meeting, as we go over the capital budget. If you have any questions now, feel free to ask, but we will be going over this in more detail on the fourth committee, the whole meeting.
I have just one thing I noticed when looking at the slide right now. I think we have a way to save a bunch of money on the pond improvements. We're off by a decimal point there. I think we were just asking for 25,000 to make some repairs as needed to village
I
ponds.
think you are correct. That sounds about right. All right. Make that note to myself.
Anything else for engineering? Not, we can go then to highways, parks, buildings and grounds. Matthew?
Yep.
Thank you, Matt.
Looking at the highways, parks, buildings, and grounds departments, I kind of want to do a summary, as many of the folks and operations within these departments overlap. So I want to do a high level look at these three divisions of public works. As you can see, they're largely supported by the levy, with about $4 million of levy support to go over these, to support these functions. The largest driver on the revenue side is state transportation aid. We had originally estimated state transportation aid to be 1.43 million. It's actually about $160,000 higher than that, that we received late last week.
What's the adjustable?
It's going to be that plus $160,000, so 1.59. On the expense side, between the three departments, we're seeing about a 2.7% increase on operating supplies and expenses, salaries, and benefits, with the largest increase coming in the operating supplies and expenses. And to highlight some of those details, I just wanted to point to one of the main increases in the operating supplies and expense size was an increase to the tree planting and maintenance budget. If you recall, in the 2024 adopted budget, we decreased that from $100,000 to $50,000 for 2024. As the village board recently implemented or adopted the comprehensive tree plan and working towards implementing that plan, we increased the tree planting / maintenance budget by $70,000 for a total of about $130,000 towards that initiative. The current recommended budget leaves asphalt paving flat at $250,000. If you do recall, historically, the village had budgeted $350,000 for seal coating. The 2024 recommended budget and adopted budget had $250,000, and that remains flat for the 2025 recommended budget. Other large operating expenses within these budgets, the largest is the waste management contract at $750,000 annually, the cleaning contract just shy of $200,000, and the state salt contract at $260,000. Between these three departments, these have some of the larger contracts that the village deals with, at least as it relates to the general fund. In addition, the village annually budgets for non-borrowed capital projects. These tend to be smaller capital projects in nature. Over the last couple of years, we've tried to keep that level of funding the same, just knowing that over the years, if we continue to decrease that, that'll just drive up the borrowed capital costs. We've tried to maintain the same level of funding for non-borrowed capital projects. And here's a list of the projects across the three departments: highways, parks, and buildings and grounds.
Can talk to the paint sprayer for roadways. I may be interpreting it wrong, but doesn't the county do all our
Striping.
striping? So why do we need this?
Good evening. You're correct. The county does a lot of our straight center line and edge line striping. If you drive around town in the summer, you will notice that our crew is out doing all the crosswalks, arrows, and onlys. This piece of equipment is what accomplishes that task.
Equipment?
This is just to replace an aging unit. It's probably about 13 or so years old right now, the current one we have.
Okay. I didn't know the village. We did any of that. Thought it was all county, but okay, that explains it. Thank you.
Anything else, Matt? Were you done with your presentation?
Yep, I just wanted to highlight, like the other departments, here are the positions within those 3 departments.
Okay, questions?
Yep, so that's for the DPW union contract. So they're paid, they do annual collective bargaining every year. And so they don't fit within our pay grades. They get paid via their union contract.
Trustee Cutts?
I see the snow and ice is down $71,000. Is there a reason? Are we expecting less snow this year? Or what's the reason for such a large cut?
The largest reason for that cut this year is last year's budget included an artificial increase to put salt into our new shed at the new location. So obviously we reduced that now. That has happened and we're ready for this winter.
Okay, all
So that's the reduction.
right, thank you.
Kind of playing off of that. So we're going more towards Bryan, aren't we?
We are going more towards brine. The village has been using brine for a while already. We've been buying that brine from the county. That while there's advantages to brine, having to truck it from West Bend is troublesome when you're trying to get an operation done ahead of a snowfall. As part of the new campus, we do have brine making equipment right there. We'll be able to store about 24,000 gallons of brine right on site that we'll be able to use for our own operations. And it's going to increase our efficiencies. The sooner you can get that, or the closer you can get that brine down to the storm under the right conditions, the more effective it is. And rather than starting like 2 or 3 days ahead of a storm, we may be able to get that a little bit closer, a day and a half, 2 days, which will help it be a little bit more effective.
So that's all taken into account on your snow and ice budget line?
Yes.
I had 2 other questions here. Materials and supplies signs?
Get there.
What's an easy way to describe? 53-13700.
You just get to the highway department.
An increase of 8,000. I was just, I don't know what,
I'm sorry, can you just give me the number one more time?
sure, it's 53-1370. Like in the middle of the listing for highways.
Okay. Yeah, we have with the county striping, we have a set of 2 maps. We have a even year and an odd year. One of those maps just happens to be, so there's some roads we paint every year. There's main thoroughfares that we paint every year. And then the rest of the village is broken down into even and odd years. And one of those just happens to be larger. So this is accounting for that difference.
What kind of signs are we talking about?
Any sign around the village. I was talking about painting. That comes out of there. So the county painting that we have, and then any sign that we replace in the village comes out of that budget as well.
You talking about regulatory signs?
Regulatory signs,
advisory.
warning signs,
Okay.
yeah, any sign in our jurisdiction.
Okay, last question. Highway maintenance and repair equipment, that's jumped 10,000. So are we looking, are you doing the math where this equipment is getting beyond the point where it's cost effective to maintain and maybe we should look at purchasing?
I think we're constantly looking at our fleet and factoring in maintenance costs with also the needs of the operation. As the village continues to grow, sometimes we've held on to patrol trucks, maybe potentially a little bit longer than we want to, but the need is there as the village continues to grow. But that's always a constant thing that we're looking at and trying to keep equipment on a nice cycle. We do have a 10-year equipment cycle or plan, I should say, that we try to follow. And again, that gets implemented into our capital budget as well.
Okay, it's kind of the jump for next year kind of caught me by surprise, but. All right, thank you, Scott.
That last line of 591000, that's $69,000 increase. What does that encompass? It's under miscellaneous equipment.
And I can take a
I've
portion
got
of
it
that.
right here, but
So that includes these non-borrowed capital projects. And if you look in the parks and buildings and grounds, you'll see decreases. Overall, the village budget's about $160,000 in non-borrowed capital projects across those three departments. In any given year, there can be large fluctuations. As you see this year, there's more projects in that department than another. But I tried to illustrate here that year over year, we budget $161,000 across those three departments. And that in any given year, it can fluctuate.
Trustee Jan Miller.
Just to follow up, so can you identify the $69,000 in your list from the front page? And could you, you said this list of this project is non-borrowed capital projects. When you have a column like this, could you total it for us? Thank you.
Yes, the total is either 160 or 161.
It's 161, according to my calculations. But 69,000 is it one project, two project? It's got to be more than one.
Yeah, go ahead.
okay. I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, you're looking specifically at the line item in the highway department, 591000.
Yes.
Okay.
What
Yeah,
President Wolf
the
just
things that
said.
make up that amount are a utility transfer to the sewer utility from the highway department for the jet vac we purchased a couple years ago. This will be our final payment to them, payment 5 of 5. We have
What is it?
Sorry?
What is it? What's
What-
a utility jet transfer?
We bought a jet vac from them about 5 years ago. So we purchased their old one. It was split between the water utility and the highway department. And
Oh.
so there was a deal made to transfer funds between general fund and the utility over a course of 5 years.
What does it do? I don't understand. What does it
A
do?
jet vac, we would use that for cleaning catch basins or manholes.
It's a vacuum cleaner, huge vacuum cleaner, right?
I'm sorry?
It's a huge vacuum cleaner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Sprays water, vacuum.
Sprays. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Uh-huh. One of those.
So that's that transfer. We own about a 23-year-old rubber tire excavator, which is actually mechanically still in very good shape, but showing some age on the body. So we've got some funds in there to do some body restoration and paint. For the purpose that machine serves the village is primarily brush pickup. And I think we probably could avoid replacing that for another 15 or 20 years if we take good care of it. So there's about $15,000 going into that machine. And then we've got just a couple small purchases. We need a front end loader bucket and a front end loader scale, which we'll be utilizing at our old DPW dome on the northwest corner of the village. And then finally, we inherited a truck from the fire department. We've done a number of these over a number of these over the last few years, where we'll take a piece of equipment from the fire department and repurpose it to something the DPW can use. Folks in the Public Works Committee may be a little bit more familiar with like some of the 1-tons that we've redone. Had a couple of them sitting out here before meetings, but this will be a piece of equipment that we can utilize and turn into a flatbed and use for highway operations. All of those things together is how that number is derived.
The questions within the topic of highway, parks, buildings, and grounds. Trustee Jan Miller.
I'm seeing that there are about 22 full-time employees. Has that gone up or down from 2024? Do you know?
It's relatively consistent.
Okay. And you said you still need one employee?
We do have one operator position that is currently open right now.
And how many part-time people do you have? Do you have any?
We have two people that we classify, we have two positions that we classify as temporary positions. There's somebody that we're working with more in a training capacity. The village has seen some success in hiring full-time out of that rank. One of those positions is filled right now. We fill them A, as we need them, or B, as we can find them. And then as it relates more to the seasonal, we hire about 8, maybe 10 on the high end for the summer seasonal.
Do they get a standard pig, or are they under contract as well?
They're not under contract. We have a range that I think is adopted by the village board, and we usually try to put them somewhere in that range and try to stay somewhat competitive with the rest of the market where they're going to look for jobs.
Yeah. One of the items was up 400% on this highway page, and it's 531080. It's called Highway Professional Development. So is that training?
It is training. Let me get to the number, so I'm giving you
It's toward the
accurate
about
information.
third way down the page.
Yep. Recent changes over the last couple of years in how a commercial driver's license is achieved requires taking people and sending them for education. I think that was recently discussed at the board level. And this is
CDL.
Just, yeah, commercial driver's license, just the way that we're funding that.
And you need an additional 16,000 to achieve that?
I think at the time we were putting the budget together, there was talk about there being in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $8,000 for that education. I know we have one hire that we will be sending this year, and again, depending on some of the other open positions we have and another anticipated retirement next year, just want to make sure we have the funding if we need it.
Well, 16 is double the 8,000 that you thought you needed.
So, I mean, well, the original budget, I think at one point was $4,000 if I'm
Right.
looking back. So again, there's still other training that goes on in the department that we're paying for out of
Okay.
that line item.
All right,
The increase was largely because of the CDL.
okay. So 1.297.
Other
And
questions? Anything else? Highway, parks, buildings and grounds. Now we get to,
Thank you.
thank you, Scott. Residential yard waste.
Much like some of the other departments, the residential yard waste facility is largely supported by the tax levy. The only revenues that the residential yard waste facility receives are some state aid revenues for recycling. And that comes in about $24,000 a year. And we left that relatively flat, decreased slightly to match the previous 2 years. On the expense side, the largest increase is the operating supplies expenses, and that is almost entirely related to the waste management contract and the annual increase we see with that contract. As you can see there, the increase in the waste management recycling contract was $14,000. The total contract for recycling is $338,000 annually. I didn't do any positions for the residential yard waste facility. That is mostly staffed by some of the sewer utility folks as well as some part-time attendants. And that's all I have for the residential yard waste facility.
Trustee Jan Miller.
I know we have a contract with Waste Management, but how long, where are we in that contract right now?
I don't know.
It's a 7-year contract. I believe we're in the 3rd year at this point.
Is that an automatic increase?
It is, it includes a provision for a CPI adjustment between a minimum of 2% per year and a maximum of 4%.
Um, the residential yard waste, that whole program is changing, and we're going to have to use a sticker. Is that correct?
Yeah, effective with the new year at the new facility, there's a sticker that you get free of charge at the DPW desk here in Village Hall. Intent there is just to identify people as Germantown residents. So when they're coming in to get the free permit, we're verifying that they're living in Germantown. And that way, because our yard waste is still free, whereas neighboring communities are all charging for it, we can eliminate some of the people coming in from other
Oh,
areas in the region.
okay. So you get a sticker and you're going to be able to get it where? We're not going to, it's not going to be mailed?
Here in Village Hall. And actually,
Oh.
we've been handing them out at a rapid pace the last couple days. I think we're up to, oh, Heidi's gone now, but I think we're around 60 already in just a couple days.
So if you have 2 cars, can you get 2 stickers?
Yep.
Okay.
Trustee Ball?
A while ago, it was a problem that we were having landscaping trucks come through the system. Have we eliminated that problem now?
I think for the most part, is that accurate, Tim? I'm not aware of a problem, but it was an issue in the past and is less of an issue now, and I think will be even less of an issue in the new facility.
With this sticker program?
With the additional controls, yeah.
Okay.
Trustee Hudson?
Yeah, I'd like clarification on trustee Miller's statement that this whole program is changing. Because the only change that we're doing is requiring a free sticker to our residents only. Other than that, there's no other changes.
Well, location.
Location,
Location.
but the whole program certainly isn't changing.
Correct. The level of service is the same. The hours, and so on, that remains the same. What you can bring in. So in that regard, the program is unchanged.
Are you maintaining a certain amount of material at the original site? And will residents draw from that, or will you draw off of it and bring it to the new site?
Yeah, we'll continue to develop it, and as it's ready, it'll be brought over to the new site until it's depleted and gone, and then that location will be officially
All right,
closed.
so as of January 1st, then there'll be no reason for a resident to go to the old site.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, from the residents' perspective, effective, I think it's the 4th is the first day we're back from the holiday. That's when drop-offs will go to the new facility.
And when will you start handing out flyers for people that go through the recycling program or come in on the weekends now?
We're already doing that.
I knew that, but I just wanted you to say it.
Yeah, we've been doing it, and it's been posted on Facebook. It went out in the newsletter a couple times. I believe it went out in the utility mailer as well. So we're doing our best to get the message out.
Thank you.
Anything else for residential yard waste? Okay. And we get to the next item, which is number 6, which is the water utility. Paul? And math?
In front of you are the projected revenues for the water utility. As you can see, there's only a slight increase in the projected revenues for the water utility in the 2025 recommended budget. This is still largely ahead of where the PSC had us a few years ago with the rate increases. They had us closer in the $3.6 million range, and we're kind of projecting around the 3.9 based on some of the past year's revenues. 2024 is projecting slightly lower than we had originally anticipated. So that's why we took a conservative approach on the water utility revenues this year. If they happen to exceed that, that's great. But just based on the 2024 projected revenues, we kept it on the more conservative side for sales of water. On the expense side, the operating expense for the water utility is relatively flat compared to the 2024 adopted budget. The biggest change really coming in fixed charges and other expenses as relates to depreciation and debt service payments. On the operating side, many of the day-to-day operation of the utility, those expenses remain flat in the 2025 recommended budget. Here's some of the, I tried to highlight some of the biggest changes, increase in depreciation as the infrastructure age and as we receive new infrastructure, we want to make sure we're budgeting a correct depreciation amount. The 2025 recommended budget has $1.1 billion for depreciation. There's also increases in debt service payments as relates to principal and interest for about slightly over $200,000 towards that. The remaining operating expenses remain flat with slight decreases across the board as it relates to the day-to-day operations of the water utility. The water utility is funded by 6 full-time positions. 4 are part of the DPW union contract and 2 are not. This does not include other allocated salaries from other funds. For example, the village administrator and myself are also partially allocated to the water utility. I didn't list every individual person that was allocated to the water utility here, just the full-time staff that are dedicated to the water utility. Here are the capital projects that are projected for the water utility in 2025. Many of it is related to well rehabs, as you'll see up there, as well as some other facilities plans and smaller equipment that is necessary for the water utility. I'm going to defer to the water superintendent.
Good evening. What that's relating to is we've got a couple streets that every curb stop is frozen and sees shut. And when a homeowner requests a water shut off, we have to shut down the entire distribution system on the block or lengths of blocks to get it shut off.
So that's replacement of it or
That's
what?
replacement of the curb stop, yes.
Ah, but that's,
I'm sorry, Bob. Go
it's
ahead.
village property, so it's not property owner's responsibility.
Right away.
Okay, thank you.
That's like a cadence maintenance change out, or you just as you find them?
It would be a complete capital project on a couple streets.
Trustee Hudson?
Are we back online with our meter installs and replacements and how many of those are we doing a year? And
Well, great question. So as we all remember, a couple years ago, we did a big $1 million project. That brought us that we played catch up. What we're doing now is you can see we've got $100,000 budgeted. So we're going back to our oldest meters. We've got a PSC rule, 10-year replacement. And so we're going back to those oldest meters and starting to replace those again.
and so we're not going to wind up with a big replacement project again. So how many do we have that are 10 years old?
I don't have that exact quantity, but we could be doing 300 to 400 a year.
Is the $100,000 going to get rid of all the 10-year-old ones this year? And then next year we'll have 10-year-old ones to do?
Yep, correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
The questions for the water utility? Accolades for the new water towers and how nice they look?
Yeah, painting's great.
Trustee Jan Miller?
Yeah, I have a question. Water tower number, I'll guess, 3 on Mequon Road that was newly painted. Is it filled with water?
Yes, it is in service.
It's in service now. Okay, so now we have 3 that are in service?
Correct.
Okay, and number 4 is up on,
Rockfield and.
thank you.
Yes.
And when is that supposed to be filled with water?
We anticipate about 2 months. We're going to start filling it.
Okay, and Matt, you could you give me the total for, it says capital projects, 2025 recommended budget for water utility identifies several projects that will be funded through cash financing and water revenue bonds. Is that still within the utility?
Yes. Yes, that'll be funded through the water utility.
And what's the total of that column approximately?
I should have added it ahead of time. That's my apologies. It's going to be about 1.1 million, just shy of 1.1 million.
Okay, and then, do we have all of our, oh, it says it up here, 1.41, 1.14, I mean. This is where debt service is allocated. The largest category is other operating expenses, and that's where the debt service is?
Yep, that's where our debt service as well as our depreciation is allocated. And that is debt service strictly for the water utility. That's not debt service for property related property taxes. That is debt service strictly related to the water utility.
So if I'm looking at this at the, toward the top of the page, it was other expenses, and it's about, it's got an increase of about 12.27%. The 1.171 million.
For depreciation?
It says other expenses, so I'm not sure if has any debt service in it or not.
Let me pull it up real quick.
Okay. Depreciation is 1.414. And the water is in other expenses.
The other operating expenses is depreciation as well as debt service.
It has both.
Yes.
Okay.
Listed in the bottom, isn't it? Of your water utility, major funds. Other questions for water utility? No other questions? Then go to sewer utility.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
The sewer utility, we're projecting about a 4% increase in public charges for services. This is entirely related to the rate increase that was approved by the village board this year. That's projected to raise revenues in the sewer utility by about $320,000 in 2025. On the operating supplies and expense side, the largest increase in, I would say almost the entire increase is related to fixed charges. This increase is almost entirely driven by MMSD increased charges for capital as well as user charges. Those increases came in significantly higher than they have in the past, which largely drove up the fixed charges here in the sewer utility. You'll see here the capital charges increased by $235,000 over the 2024 budget, and the user charges increased by about $440,000 over the 2024 adopted budget. Total charges from MSD, which are paid quarterly to MMSD, are just shy of $5.6 million.
Trustee Ball?
Can you touch base on that fixed charges of $861,977? Why is that going up? Who's responsible for that going up? What can we do to not let it go up? Do we have any control over it?
I might pass that along to our sewer superintendent. Those are charges based on MMSD calculations that are applied to all
Non-member communities. We're a contract community for MMSD. And the same charges are passed on to the member communities as well.
What was the benefit of membership?
The question was, can you give me more information on what this is? It's MMSD's fee We have no ability to challenge it, change it, reduce it, impact it at all. We have to accept this charge and we have to pass it on to our residents who are on the sewer utility.
Passing it on is kind of a vague term because we don't directly pass it on. The majority of it is absorbed by the sewer utility until our next rate increase determines that we need more revenue. This is one of those situations where we just approved a rate increase, but our rate increase is pretty much being gobbled up by this increase at MMSD. If you remember the sewer wars that were fought during the 80s and 90s, this is what happened. We pay based on equalized value. So as our equalized value goes up, our payments to MMSD go up. And it's a direct relationship. We just went through a reevaluation, everything went up. So now our rates go up accordingly.
So this is strictly an MMSD
It is,
cost
unfortunately.
that we have to pass it on.
Yep, and the only one that really is tangible is the capital charges, because those we can say, we can look at that and we can say we're doing water course work on the Menominee River, we're building new clarifiers at the treatment plant, all based on allocated flow. So if MMSD has to increase their capacity to treat liquid waste, those are a tangible thing you can wrap your head around on the capital charges. The user charges are, you know, like I said, they're based on equalized value. So those, as the value of the village goes up, so do those costs.
Yeah, thank you.
Trustee Jan Miller.
So, I'm looking at your engineering study and it says Old Farm and Main Street. Was that what you talked about in the Public Works today?
Yes and no.
That I asked.
The study that we brought to Public Works is a needs analysis of what needs to be done at those two major lift stations to upgrade them for the future. So we're going to be starting that study in 2024 because there's money budgeted and it'll carry over into 25. The larger value contract will be when we go out for design and bid of those improvements for those two lift stations.
So the study was approved in Public Works and this 100,000 for both of those is for the design?
Correct, which will be
Okay,
coming forward in
forward,
2025
25.
for approval.
Okay. Okay. I drive down Division Road a lot. The Old Farm lift station needs some help. It stinks. I mean, literally, there's an odor coming from it.
Better than it was. That filter's still on it?
The filter's still on it. We're very dry. We're at our lowest flows of the year because we haven't had a lot of rain. The
Right.
system is not getting diluted.
Ah.
And so the wastes that are there are highly concentrated.
Mm.
We've been trying to keep up with other odor counteractants. We've been adding stuff on Mondays and Fridays so that we kind of bridge. The other thing we have going on at this time of the year is we're getting nice cool weather at night.
Yeah.
More people have their windows open.
Oh, yeah.
And the nature of the smell of sewage is it likes to hang low and kind of creep into your bedroom window while you're sleeping at night. It's just for the beast, but we are doing everything we can with odor counteractants and we have the ozone treatment cranked wide open, so.
Just because it's the Halloween season, we don't need creepy and smelly. Thank you.
That one takes it straight off of Gales, right? It takes all the fluent off of Gales, so it has a high mixture of
It's,
proteins and stuff.
the biggest contributor is the Lift 6 basin. We have 26 grease traps and commercial kitchens along County Line Road. That's the biggest contributor to that odor that you smell with hydrogen sulfide.
Yeah.
It's largely fats, oils, and grease from fast food restaurants.
They should have that all picked up, you know, that restaurants. They do have fat collectors.
They do, but there's still a good percentage.
I know that goes down the
washes right
drain.
Down the drain.
Yeah, they have to clean it. Okay. So, well, thanks for taking care of Old Farm there.
Other questions for the sewer utility? Anything you want to add, Tim?
As you see, capital is relatively flat compared to recent years. The reason for that is we're going to be coming up on some huge capital expenditures to improve Main Street and Old Farm lifts for the future of the village. Like the studies show, the bones are good and there's no need to necessarily rebuild those, but they are going to need some definite improvements to keep up with the growth of the village for the future.
Are we still doing relining projects?
We just at Public Works approved the last water crossing liner that the village needs to do. That's the one over in the new business park that's underneath the retention pond behind Ellsworth Adhesives by Tower 3. And then we will not be doing any relining as needed for protection of the system in the event of a catastrophic strike. And we'll be going more onto maintenance lining if needed.
Okay. That's all taken off of your yearly visuals?
Correct. And it's kind of driven by the road program.
Trustee Hudson?
I know what a lift station is. I know what a laptop is. What is a 555, please?
Oh, that's a replacement of one of our trucks. For the
It's a
fleet.
truck.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep, truck 550.
Trustee Chan Miller?
I know what a lift station is, but I don't know which one number 6 is.
Lift station number 6 is located on the east side of the Menominee River by Fleet Farm.
County line.
On
Oh,
County Line.
County Line Road,
Landlocked one.
Right.
Buffalo Wild Wings.
Buffalo Wild Wings. So are you improving with $1 million?
No, we're looking at if the parcel, if we get a willing seller with the parcel across the river to buy that parcel, to move lift 6 over to that in the future with a possible elimination of lift station number 3.
So, but this is a wish list because it's not even for sale, right? The last report you had was,
It's for sale, but they're not willing to sell it to the village.
They're mad at us.
it's not for sale for us.
If you recall, this Lift 6 station has been in the budget the last couple of years. You can consider it carryover from previous years. I think it first appeared in the budget 2 years ago. A similar dollar amount was in the 2024 adopted budget. And it, again, is in the 2025 adopted budget. In the event that something forward with that there is budget authority and there is some plan ahead of time for those dollars.
So this is just a maybe. It's been a maybe for a couple of years,
Right,
correct?
it's part of the capital, so it can be voted on to remain or remove.
Okay. But we're not there yet, right?
Right.
And can you explain what the 5.5 truck does?
It is
Is
a,
it pickup truck or?
it is one of our standard pickup trucks equipped with snow removal equipment, lift gate and toolboxes.
Does it have a crane on it?
It does not have a crane on it.
Oh. Do you have to use the plow to get to some of your stations? You know, the.
Yes, we
okay.
plow our facility.
Your own
just
facility.
like, you know, Village Hall gets plowed or the police station gets plowed.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the sewer utility? No other questions? All right, thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
All right, takes care of all items under budget review. Our next meeting.
President Walter, excuse me. There's something I forgot to ask about the sewer utility. There was an asterisk down here and it says positions fully 90% allocated to sewer utility. Well, where is the other 10%? That's a Matt, you.
Those
question.
folks are allocated to the residential yard waste facility. So a
Oh,
portion of,
okay.
since they do a lot of work for the residential yard waste facility, a portion of their salaries is allocated to that department's budget.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Thank you.
Okay. Then that takes care of the next meeting is October 8th at 6 PM here at the Village Hall Boardroom. If there's nothing else, then we are adjourned. So thank you all for coming tonight and thank you all for watching and have a good night.